So you've heard of Boston Dynamics? Do you know who that company is?
They make the robots.
They make the robots.
Yes.
Fascinating that you would immediately know that, right? That most people who pay attention to pop culture, if you're on any kind of social media, you've seen videos of their humanoid robot doing the parkour, running around the ramps, jumps up on the scaffolding, and does the backflip off the scaffolding.
Yes.
It's just amazing, right?
Correct.
It's incredible. And so I was thinking about that. I was actually listening to an interview with the CEO of Boston Dynamics. Mm-hmm. If you don't know who Boston Dynamics are, they're a company that started from some research scientists and engineers out of MIT, and they were into robotics. They got some contracts with the government early on with DARPA, and they won some other competitions, and it kind of launched them into some grants and some money, and then Google bought them at one point. Now Hyundai owns them. So they have some corporate backing, and they're actually becoming more of a commercial entity, and they build robots for industry and all kinds of stuff. What's fascinating to me was hearing the CEO describe the effort that has gone into making a robot that looks like a human, that walks like a human, that has a natural gait, that operates in the form that we would expect from a human. And what was fascinating to me is that they've also come up with a line of robots called Stretch. And Stretch basically is a robot that runs on wheels, basically has a big base, and it has one arm, and it's used in loading and unloading applications of boxes. And it can dramatically increase productivity and reduce the need for humans to do difficult labor in hot, enclosed trailers of cargo ships and stuff like that. And so they built that robot simply for function. And it doesn't look anything like a human. But then they've spent all this time, money, and energy in building this robot that looks like a human. And hearing the owner describe the inherent difficulties of that design, because basically we don't think about it, but when we walk, we straighten out our leg, and then we hit heel to toe, and then we flex our knee, and then we balance, and we maintain our balance. But basically, we're not very efficient machines, because all of our weight, the center of mass, is very high off the ground, and so it takes a lot of effort, a lot of work to maintain balance as we move and as we go. So I really got to thinking about it. I'm like, okay, well, what is the point of trying so hard, spending decades and millions and millions and millions of dollars to try to build a robot that looks like us, instead of just building a machine that's going to accomplish a specific task that's actually arguably easier to design, that's more functional, but just looks different, doesn't look like us. So I was thinking about that because you had talked the other day to me, you had kind of put a spark in my brain about who we are, about identity, about maybe a sermon series we're thinking about after the first of the year. And the idea of that is, who are we? Like, how are we created in such a way that we become something that's beautiful, something that's miraculous? And we believe, from a biblical perspective, that we're at the pinnacle of God's creation and we're at the top. And so it was fascinating to me that humans trying to build a machine to do certain tasks are actually trying to build those machines that look like us, that are in the image of us. And I thought it'd be fun just to talk a little bit about that, and then also the advancement of technology, artificial intelligence, where we're going in that direction, and kind of because that's becoming so prevalent, how should a believer feel about the encroachments of robotics, artificial intelligence, and all the things that seem to be replacing humans maybe at the top of this world and this creation.
Man, that was a long introduction, man. That was ridiculous.
I apologize for being loquacious today.
No, it wasn't long.
Verbose.
It wasn't long in words. It was like heady. Like, you just came out here like did you take a weekend MIT course yourself? Like, my goodness.
Well, you know me. I'm always, I'm a learner, man. I'm out here exploring the deep water, man.
You're in the hunt.
Yeah.
No, I think so. Obviously, a few things. I feel that people have always they always want form and function in everything. The most efficient things generally don't look the best.
Right.
Because there's a reason, because you like that's the whole problem that people have when they design anything is that for it to function, there's one realm,
right?
But then we like pleasant things. Like we want to buy things that come in nice packaging. We want to look nice, and so the form of it matters as well. But sometimes to blend that, you have to give and take what you want. And so for me, it's all day. I'm all about efficient.
Yeah.
And so if you and me, I'm all about what's going to get the job done. Like it doesn't need to look like anything. Like it's here to do a job. Like I feel there are certain things that are for that, like
shoes,
clothes, or like a car, like a
watches,
like a sports car is not gonna get great gas mileage.
No,
that's just not what it's supposed to be doing. Like if you have that vehicle, you're not worried about saving money at the pump. And so like that's why a Ferrari looks different than a Prius.
And that's a trade-off on form versus function.
100%.
We're always making that negotiation.
Yes, I thought the Prius was ugly from Jump Street. I think like the first time I've seen a Prius to now, I thought it was hideous.
Yes.
But at the time, I traveled a lot for work. So at the time, 400 miles was mind-boggling. When I first heard that, so I was willing. I couldn't afford it then, but if I could, I would have gotten one because it would have saved me a lot of money in gas.
Yeah, I got you.
From where I was working, because I was working like an hour and 15 each way. And traffic was bad in Arizona, and so I would have done that. But the form was not good.
Right.
I mean, I know there's some people out there who somebody loves everything. Beauty's an eye of the beholder, right?
It is.
Somebody loves that ugly duck somewhere. Like that's okay, right? There's somebody for you. If you're the ugly duckling. There's somebody hey, I'm just saying that for you and I, right? We found somebody. We're not the prettiest bass in the lake.
No, we're not.
But,
no, we're not.
You know what I'm saying? But it's like, but I feel like it's obviously subjective. But we can all pretty much agree that most people are going to pick a Ferrari over a Prius. And so like when it comes to that, there's general standards. So it doesn't surprise me that going into your other question of like AI coming in and automation and things of that nature, that if there are going to be jobs that maybe robotics and AI can take some of the mundane and redundancy out of human nature, I feel that the human form, just from a humanity perspective, is kind of like the highest form that we love, right? Like we think that that's the most beautiful thing. It's the most appeasing to our eye. It's the most familiar is our form because we on this planet are the top of the food chain, right? And so I said that as if there could be a higher life on other planets. Somebody's I prefaced that I realized somebody's thinking like, what is he talking about on this planet?
On this planet.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying for we know because we talk about what we know. So I'm what I'm trying to say. I hate to make universal statements. So what I'm trying to say is on our planet, what we know, we're the highest thing. So it would not surprise me or does not surprise me that if they think that one day I might go into a Best Western hotel or Enterprise and there is not a human, but a humanoid back there, I probably would want to interact with something that looked like me, that had the form and function of me, that could mimic some of the mannerisms because I'm comfortable with it. So I think that that's why, even though it is a waste of time where you just might have a box there, we would rather have the form over just the function in that regard.
Yeah, I think everything is a trade-off between form and function. As somebody who likes to build things, I'm always making that negotiation.
Right.
And I think I appreciate you brought that up because that is important. And if we're using robots to go in and defuse bombs or to go in and like there was one, like the CEO was talking about there's an electric company in Canada that has this transfer switch that they have to flip occasionally for servicing. And when they do, there's been a couple of occasions where people have died because when they flip the break, it's a huge breaker. And when they flip it, there's arcing of electricity that can jump across still.
Right.
And so he said basically that one of their robots, not the humanoid, but one of the other robots that they had developed, was basically now being used for that. And so if we can take tasks that put humans in danger and put them in the hands of robots, that's fine.
100%.
But that robot doesn't have to look like a human.
No.
It can just be whatever we can build. Like he was saying that
it would be ridiculous for it too.
Yeah, the first robots that they had like a go-kart engine on them, and they took the mufflers off because they were trying to. It was loud and it was obnoxious, but they were just trying to build something that worked.
Yes,
and I think what's fascinating to me is the main robots that they promote on their social media videos is the humanoid robot, the one who runs and jumps and throws stuff, and they're just talking about how he was talking to me. To me, I just didn't. I didn't really understand. Like, it wasn't clear exactly. Okay, what's the purpose of that robot?
The humanoid.
You know, because they have a quadruped that they call Spot that basically is used in factories or whatever, and they use it to go check temperature gauges and pressure gauges and all kinds of stuff around in a specific environment for a specific task. And these robots are, they're $150,000 or whatever. They're very expensive. But the humanoid robot, like, he never said, okay, what we're developing this for. And so all I see is when I see him is I see Terminator, the movie that, like the thing that looks like a human, but it actually is out for our destruction. And so I think that's the fear of that idea. And then the fear of artificial intelligence. Like, where is artificial intelligence going? ChatGPT is very popular right now. People are using it. We're using AI technology for some of our graphic stuff, and it's creating stuff that we couldn't create. And it's pulling stuff that's fake, that's not real, but it looks identical to what real is. And so, to me, I've just been thinking a lot about as a believer who believes in a creator God who created what we think is the most beautiful environment. And we stand on the top of a mountain and we're in awe. We stand on the beach and we see the waves crashing and we're in awe. I've been on a beach in Indonesia and the water's just blue and beautiful and I'm in awe of God's creation. And so those are the things to me that when I see that and it seems like that humanity is pushing towards the artificial. And the artificial, though, is trying to be a replication of what is already true and what is already real. And so at some point, I wonder what the crossover is going to look like. At some point, will we think that what creation is just not enough, and we have to take it to another level? And so I think I'm just wondering if at some point for people who follow Jesus, is there going to be a place where we have to pull back?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating argument because I see kind of the caution that you have in how you're presenting it, but I also see the other side of it that we really love, which is
well, I'm old and you're younger, so I can understand where you'd be a little more comfortable with it than I would be.
Well, but I also know that you love technology.
I do, yeah,
and you love removing redundancies.
Yeah,
and so like you can see how this would help on just general. I mean, for me, the problem that I have is that some of the mundane and tedious things currently are done by somebody, and somebody gets paid for that. And so I do realize that when you can plug something in and you buy it once and it can do this forever and it has no sick days and it comes in, that means that people will lose a job. So I know that it does have a negative impact just off of that. Right. That if you got somebody who, like I went to Stars and Strikes a couple weeks ago, and I went there and I walked over and it has a kiosk where you go and you put your order in. Right. So you go to a kiosk, you put your order in, you put your table number, you sit down. I'm sitting there waiting, and a robot rolls out of the kitchen and brings my food to me because it knows where my table was at and has the grid. So I never touched anybody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that. So before a year ago, there'd have been a server.
Yes.
Who would have got a tip. And so that, like, it was cool, but immediately I thought, man, that's crazy. That's a job. But now they don't have to pay somebody. That robot, if it doesn't break, if it comes in, it's always going to be on time. It's always there. It's ready to go. It's going to follow that path. It's not going to make the customer upset. There's no drama with it. It's no drama. And so I get what it is, and I get the efficiency, and I get that it eliminates the need of some redundancies, but it also comes at a cost of someone having a job. So I understand that. I also understand that there's been talks and thoughts of, like, obviously just like the like with Tesla and some of the other vehicles that offer the auto drive, right?
Yep.
That they've done a lot of statistics about the self-driving delivery vehicles that some of the other places that are doing, how they are safer, like how like they know that they're in this grid and they're going and that they're better at driving than we are. That's already proven, right? We don't want to give up, and legislators don't want to put that out there, but it's proven that unless there's a problem with the robotic, if it goes down, the system crashes, there should be a way for somebody to get back control. But generally, if it works, we would have easier commutes. It's all better because the braking, accelerating, all this type of data is great. But I feel like that'd be fantastic. I would love to just sit there and go and be driven, right? That'd be fantastic.
You would?
I would love because I love efficiency. I hate traffic backing up because people are waiting to merge over to the lane to the end. Like I would love for things to flow and be this easy way to know that, man, if I'm going to go from here to North Raleigh, it's going to be 20 minutes every time because that's just the way it flows. You can just put it in there and go. I like the idea of drones being able to get medicine to places quicker. That it used to be hours, and they're able to use this and drop it off in these boxes and places that they have that some of my friends were telling me about that it used to take them, used to take them multiple hours or maybe days to get there, but now because they can fly these drones to these different places, it can get there in hours. Some of these remote places that they're using these different technology in different ways that are helping get this stuff done. So I see the beauty of it. I see that maybe if they can make this technology to be great to where you can have this humanoid that might be almost like a nanny, where people think about that it's like an in-home housekeeper, that it does these different things. And so like for people who might be single parents or widowed or things like that, it can be in there to substitute that, and it could be something that could be affordable to be like a living assistant to help with daily tasks in the house. Like I see that there's value in those things, but I also see your point that whenever you pivot to technology, whenever you pivot to that, and you put your trust in that, you also do open yourself up for it to fail you or for it to replace the real thing. Like, I think that's the whole thing. Like I remember, and you and I remember, there are some people listening to this podcast. I mean, I don't know how young our audience are, but surprisingly, if you're not that old, that they remember when there was no thing in social media. Like, so you and I remember that.
Right.
Like, it just, that word did not mean anything.
No.
And so we remember when that first was coming on board, how it was the same type of thing. Like, what is this? It can be used for good. It can be all this thing. It's going to open the world up. Given some time later, we now see that some of the warnings that we had about some of that by some psychologists and some people, so sociologists, were true. That there's going to be a lack of engagement. There's going to be a lack of actual physical connectivity between people because of this.
Right.
We're going to be detached. We're going to be more used to looking at our screens than each other in the eye. Some of those things are the case, and so I feel like just like with any technology, you have to get to the point you're trying to get to, which is, does the good outweigh the bad? Is the risk worth the reward?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would hate the fact that I would just get in a car and it would take me somewhere. I would hate that because I just love to drive. Like, I love the interaction with me and the machine.
Yeah, but if you were in the car, if you say you were going to Charlotte,
right,
that's 3.5 hour drive, 3 hour drive, and if you were just getting in there and you in the backseat with Dana, you could just be talking. I mean, you talk now, but you could be talking, doing something in that drive, in that space.
Yeah.
When going to Charlotte, there's nothing going on in that drive.
But for me, it's like us going to Charlotte together is more about me just getting to Charlotte, like being in Charlotte.
Right.
Like, if I wanted to do that, like for me, I mean, Dana and I, we love a road trip. And it's about stopping and making decisions. Hey, there's an antique store on this exit. We're going to get off here. We're going to do this. Hey, I just saw that sheet sign. We need a milkshake. Let's stop and get it. I don't know. I just feel like to me, like that particular, like when you started talking about that, I would not want to give that up.
But you know me enough to know that that's not how I am. If I'm going to Charlotte, I'm driving to go to IKEA.
Yeah, there are some soulless people out there who don't like to do anything but just get what they want when they want it, and that's fine if y'all are like that.
That's messed up. Soulless. That's fine.
Well,
okay,
whatever. You know what I'm saying.
I got you. No, I'm hurt.
It goes back to our puzzle, like this, like the journey. Like, it's just like part of. It's like when there's this been battle in Major League Baseball for years. Now, we have technology to call balls and strikes perfectly. With technology, we could just take the umpire out of the game. But there's just been a battle of, well, isn't part of the game, the interaction with the umpire.
Of course.
Billy Martin coming out kicking dirt on the base and stuff like
you gotta have that.
All that
right,
stuff.
You have to have that.
And so, and I just feel like that argument basically is elevated. Like when you look at that particular one instance, we have to make a decision: is the human better? Is actually even the inefficiencies?
But would you get on a train?
Is it still better?
Would you get on a train? Would you enjoy a train ride?
Yeah.
So you're not driving them, but you're on a journey.
Yeah,
so I feel
but it's
like,
a train.
But I feel like getting in my vehicle for that same period, when I'm on the train, I can focus more with, like if I'm with my boys and with Camilla, I can then in that time be talking and focusing while I'm still traveling.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm driving, there is still a portion of me that has to make sure I'm getting my exit, make sure I'm watching my gas. It's the same type of thing for a train. So like if you get on a train and enjoy that, you can enjoy the same thing by having the car drive you then. It's your own personal train whenever you want it to be.
Yeah, but I want to drive it.
So then,
I love to drive. Like some people just love to drive, like to feel the engine and to be able to be in control of that.
so just being on a train would be different because it's a train.
It's a train experience. It's totally different. Like it's like getting on an airplane. It's totally different. Would I prefer to get on an airplane and fly it myself? Yeah.
that would be awesome.
Would I love to be sitting up in the front, with the engineer running the train? Yeah.
That'd be the best.
Hanging out the window. Woo-hoo. Yeah. I mean,
that would be the best.
That would be better.
Of course. Well, yes.
And so, right now, as we record this podcast, there's a writer's strike going on in the film industry and in TV, and so that means Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, all those guys who write their script, their jokes, and all that stuff. And a lot of what they're saying is like they're trying to have contract issues to push back on like AI coming in and beginning to write. Like ChatGPT is used a lot, by some of our fellow pastors to write sermons or to write papers or to write technical papers or whatever. People will put in prompts and it'll spit out something and then they can just fine tune it and tweak it. And I'm sure I hadn't thought of it, but now all of a sudden people can say, hey, write me a script about so and so, or write me a joke that has to do, with Joe Biden or Donald Trump or whatever the funny thing is, and all that could be done with technology instead of actually having to pay somebody an exorbitant price and salary that's been negotiated by a union. And so I can okay, well, if ChatGPT writes a funny joke,
right,
versus the human writing the joke, but what do we want? Like, what actually do we want? Do we want a crafted joke, or do we want? Because part of like humor is the human interaction.
Yes.
It's us being able to make fun of what we know about each other.
Yes.
It's making fun of this life that we're living together.
100%.
And the goofy things that
100%.
we do. And so isn't that better seen by actual humans?
Yeah.
Isn't it more pure that way?
Right.
Even though it could be good. I'm not saying it can't be good through artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. But at some point I think that there's going to be a place where we were like, no, I don't want it here.
Yes.
I'm not comfortable with it here.
100%.
But as we just demonstrated, that place is different for each individual, I think.
Right.
And so that's what I'm concerned with and confused about is who's going to be drawing those lines for us.
Yes.
Culturally, like in the world, on the world's stage, who's going to be drawing those lines? Because every country is going to have different perspectives on it.
And to be fair, like I agree with you. I also like to drive. I've driven everywhere we go because Camilla's not really a big driver, right? My wife. And so I would never say that, yes, you would prefer to drive when you drive. I would say that I'd be okay with the chauffeur mode. But I would not be okay if it was a new law that said, humans are no longer to drive. Like, driving is now only by AI. Like, I feel like we both would agree that's a line too far. Like, I feel like I still would want to have the right to drive my own vehicle whenever I wanted to.
Okay,
and that's kind of like you don't want to get to where it's just a hard and fast. Like, there's gray and nuance.
But then if you do that, you mess up the efficiency of this whole beautiful system that you think. Where if everybody's
I understand
in an AI vehicle,
but see, that's what I'm saying. I don't. But I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Like, that's the point to where that's why they're having all these conversations.
Yeah,
because then yes, you do. Because if you have 70% of the people on the road with AI, and then you have 30% human drivers, we're going to interact differently.
Yes.
And that can that's the point. So like, where do we want to go as a society? And that's what you're saying. The nuances, the different things that happen. That it's the interesting thing about this, because I talked to some people who are in this space, and then I talked to them about some things that were science fiction and science reality. So two things are obviously the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
That's put some great content out from science fiction, and Will Smith's iRobot. Okay. Obviously in Terminator, they create the
Don't forget Wall-E. That was a great movie about this whole idea.
That was brilliant.
That was a fantastic movie.
That was brilliant. That was really, 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 really good. You got me with that one.
Yeah.
In Terminator, obviously, it's all about the rise of the machines, right? The AI technology and them coming back from the future to stop us from doing that, because we end up creating this thing that gets out of control, right? And so there's safeguards in the program of what they try to limit it, and it's being agreed upon by collectively in our current world that we want to keep safeguards on that AI. Like, you can't ask AI right now in its current form the best way to torture somebody, because it in its previous versions when they were testing it would give you that. Like, it would give you and like that. No one, you shouldn't just have access to that type of stuff.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? Like that. So they realize that, right?
How to commit the perfect murder.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, right. And so but like that, once again, that's agreed upon right now. Obviously in the hands of the wrong people, nefarious people, they can unlock and break things down that way that AI can become bad. In Will Smith's iRobot, the problem with that when they had artificial intelligence and humanoids is that it made a decision and determination on whose life could be saved. That was the whole juxtaposition of like who had the better chance. And the whole point was that a human would make the decision that both lives are matter. That like, I'm going to go for both. Like, I'm not going to say, well, because you have a 17% chance and your son Brock has a 30% chance, I'm going to leave you and try to go to Brock because that's more efficient. That's more like, you just try to say both.
Right.
And so I feel like that spectrum of questions also have to be answered with that when we give technology and we move into saying it's more efficient. The human touch is always different. Like, because when you always go for efficiency, the marginalized, the lower denominations, the lower the number gets mistreated, and some of those people can be saved. Like, that's where I feel like it's a problem as far as always going with efficiency. Because I'm an efficient person, and I've had to realize that like people always tell me that like efficient people have no heart, like you just said before, have no soul, and so like that we have because when somebody told me a long time ago is that love is not efficient. That love by definition is inefficient, because if love was efficient, it wouldn't do a lot of things that love does.
Right. Absolutely.
And so that's always been something that when I heard that, it really resonated with me to be like that. That's the balance for the Christian, is that when it comes to automation, technology, AI, anything that we trade in efficiency for and we rally behind, we have to realize, okay, getting this mundane, getting this task, getting it off our plate is one thing, but does it leave room for us still to interact and make sure that something that's underneath the surface is still not just getting swept away? Because that's what a lot of our technology does, is that it gets away with inefficiencies, but sometimes there's beauty in the inefficiencies.
Yeah, I mean, I think artificial intelligence is going to be able to craft interactions that look a lot like love. They're going to have all the language of love.
Right.
But can it ever really be love? Because it's artificial. And the sacrifice that love calls us to is really not ever efficient, like you're talking about.
It's not really programmable.
It's not programmable.
Yes.
And so I think that's a weird place where it's their technology and human existence, because that's what separates us from the rest of creation. And so I think that's going to be a weird place where, I know that Boston Dynamics and other robotics companies have entered into an agreement. They've made a statement or whatever that those companies are never going to put weapons on their robots.
Right.
You know, but people can buy their robots anytime they want, and then they can just add a weapon to it. I mean, it's not, and you know, ChatGPT, other AI technology that's out there, it's great right now because it's controlled
Yes.
in certain places, but just like we have a dark web,
Yep.
somebody has taken something that's public and good, and then there's this nefarious underworld
Correct.
place of it. And there's a lot of damage done to culture by things bought and sold. You can hire somebody to kill your wife on the dark web,
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm just saying if the availability of artificial intelligence technology becomes so ubiquitous, where it's out there, it's open sourced, and everybody can kind of get to it or whatever and get their access to it, then there's going to be some bad players
100%.
that get into it. And I mean, you could even see a place where somebody could create something that said, look, if you don't, like if the governments of the world don't give us, $1 billion each, we're gonna unleash this, and it's gonna go to its ultimate end. To me, I think that's the danger of the potential danger of something that has a lot of potential for good, and it's fascinating, it's interesting. And I guess, like, for me, I was thinking about this the other day, and I was thinking about how hard we work to craft our sermons, and then how do I feel about a pastor who would just go into ChatGPT, get the sermon written, and just stand up and read that sermon. And how hard it would be, and how difficult it would be to really truly be passionate about something that was written through artificial intelligence versus as you and I are working through the outlines, and then when it's our turn to preach, that we take that outline that we wrote together, and then we immerse ourselves into it, we dive into it, we do research on it, and there's just so much power in the passion that comes from that. And I guess for me, it's just a danger in losing our souls, in losing what makes humans unique to creation if we just let the artificial take over. And I think that's, we talked about, using artificial intelligence to, like, well, we've written, I don't know how many podcasts have we done? Almost 200 now.
It's like 138.
Yeah, 138. All right.
Something like that.
So
133. Okay.
So anyway, we've got a lot of podcasts. So if artificial intelligence could go through all of our podcasts and do like a summary, or like a here's what they believe about this or whatever, and those kinds of things I think could be very helpful.
Yeah,
that technology could be helpful. On the backside, let's take the information that's out there from this particular group and let's summarize that.
Yes,
I think that I like that idea.
Yeah,
as opposed to I'm just going to take, all these different things that have been written in all these different places from all these different people, and nobody gets any credit, but it's just this, what I'm creating is this amalgamation that's artificial.
Yeah. And
no human has actually put work and effort into that pulling that information together. I don't know. For me, I guess I do love technology, but I'm old school enough to really see, to me, that just doesn't feel right. Like I don't want us to be the Wall-E. I don't want us to be like, the humans that can't do anything because we've just given ourselves totally over to the work of machines. I just feel like that's a dangerous place to go.
Yeah, I think the last thing I'll say on that is that I was blown away by what ChatGPT can do.
Right.
Like once again, like, we have lots of sermon notes. We have lots of hours on this podcast.
Right.
And it could really take both of those things and distill it. And it could actually give us like a great idea of what we talk about, what we are. It actually then learns our thinking and style so it can find other resources.
Right.
So it's like a really robust Google. But it is our stuff. Like,
right.
It's learning us.
Yes.
And then I have used ChatGPT when I have gone in and I've been really milling over something in a sermon. And I've been like, hey, you know what? This stood out to me. Can you look at everything that's ever been said about this?
Right.
And so then it gives me all that.
It's a research
and
tool.
then it's a researcher. But the thing about it is that what I'm saying is different from what you're saying. I know what I'm looking for because I've put the time in the hard way. And that's what I was talking to a couple of our friends about this, is that's the danger for the new generations, is that we know how to get the information. Like, I remember the Dewey Decimal System. Like, I remember going to the library and having to look up a book to go get it up and write a paper over that. So
go through the cards.
So I know how to do a research paper. Like, I know how to find topics, and then I've studied. The problem is that ChatGPT can get a guy who just says, I want to go preach, and he can just type in Sermon on the Mount outline, and it will give you Sermon on the Mount outline. Then he can also say, go ahead and write this sermon, and it will write this sermon, and it will be a brand new sermon that no one's ever preached, but it has all the information between whenever ChatGPT came. I think it's like 2021 or 2000 whatever, and it'll give it to you. And there's no substance there because you never really learned it and was in it. And the process of learning is the process of learning. Like and so I think that's the issue where we become so reliant, is that it's not just about going and just getting the information. Getting the information gets the information in you. And I feel like that's the danger that I see with that, is that I feel that social media and Instagram and all the likes, it messes with our endorphins, and it has us seeking for validation, seeking for confidence, seeking for those things, and it overstimulates those things in our brain, and it pushes us towards that, and it weakens us as a society. I think what you're saying now, when we can just type something in and get the information, it will dumb us down. We'll have more information to be smarter, but we'll be dumber for it. Like, think about it as it is. There was as far as like knowledge goes, people knew more, understood more, communicated more when they were illiterate, because they passed down stories. When we became literate and it became open to us to read, it's gone backwards. Like, we don't read as much. Like, we're not as well versed. We're not as well read. Like, that's a sad thing. Like, when you create technology, when you look at it and it makes it easier for the masses to get, it doesn't make the masses always better.
Yeah, I mean, I think
or more educated.
Right. One of the things that I had to do when I was working on my Master's of Divinity was I took a preaching class. We studied old preachers, and one of the things that we did was we examined their sermons, because they wrote sermons out like they were writing a book.
Papers, right.
And then we also studied their letters.
Yeah.
Letters that they wrote to family and friends. And I was fascinated, and I mean, this was, early 2000s, I was going through school. And so even at that point, I was aware, people aren't going to be able to go back and study like what I've written and what I've done. Because we just do it differently. And the manipulation of language was so beautiful, and there was artistry in that. Like, it's just beautiful the way those guys would put and it was just, and it's just one after another. Like, you read them all, and they're just like, man, they're brilliant,
right?
Like you're saying, well read, like enough to be able to pour in, and the insight and the depth of explanations and the complexity of the sermons these guys would preach. And I'm thinking, wow,
right.
And then we just couldn't do that today. Like, and I was thinking about the efficiencies of, like, we have a Logos software that we use, which has, a lot of research tools in one tool, which makes super efficient studying for us. When we're doing research, we can look at the original languages, we can look at commentaries, all that stuff is in one tool, one research tool. It's fantastic. It's great. So instead of reaching for books on our bookshelves and pouring through pages, it's all right there. And so that's efficient. But like you're saying, even with using ChatGPT to do research on skepticism, like you talked about skepticism on Sunday,
right?
That you're pulling, like, we would use Google to do that. Like, in the past, like, you use quotes or whatever, you search for that, and you'd find information about that. So I think that as a research tool, it's very powerful. But I think, the danger of the creep of technology is, what are we losing? What are we giving up? And is it really worth that trade?
Thanks again.